How are you?
Hello. Good. How are you? I
Good.
was actually just talking to Autumn. How funny is that shit?
Oh yeah, exactly. That's just one of the questions I was going to ask you if you still kept in touch with anyone.
We got some things. We have some things happening, little Autumn and I. You know?
I love it. How are
Hell
you?
yeah.
So nice to meet you.
Good. Yeah,
And it's
man.
on
It's good to meet
Zoom,
you.
but it's kind of becoming the new normal.
Yeah. Actually, I'm grateful for Zoom because, well, not that I'm antisocial, but it does help business get done without actually having to be there, which is nice.
Yeah. So can you introduce that? Like, I know you own your own salon. Is that still what you're doing? Have you changed to doing more food related stuff, or are you still running your full salon? I know you do quite a lot there.
Right. So we closed the salon January 26th of this year. So I don't know. I mean, I know that Canada's obviously going through it too with COVID. We live in a state that our governor, she was just, I mean, it was a mandatory closure for almost 5 months.
Yeah.
And by no means, and I received federally $1,011 from the CP or whatever the PPP loans. That's as much as I received. And so to be able to continue to pay and not be open. And then after that, I mean, people didn't want their faces touched. People weren't buying
So
cosmetics because
true.
A, they either didn't have a job, or B, they were terrified, or C, they were doing Zoom and they didn't give a shit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what? It's true. Like, and I think that's something that gets overlooked throughout this whole pandemic. I know that obviously there's a lot of people that feel for small business owners, but unless you're in a small business, you don't realize like how terrible this was to
Mhm.
everyone has their own politics and stuff. And I don't really get into that stuff, but
Yeah.
here we got shut down for so long. Like we're still not,
Mhm.
we've never fully opened. Like we've never gone from masks in Ontario anyway. We've never gone away
Mhm.
from masks. There's still a lot of stuff that is closed. But it the hardest part is seeing like Walmart open and seeing like all these huge corporations that are open and 300 people standing in line for them. And then you got the mom and pop shop that you went to weekly for your haircut or to grab some
Yeah.
food or whatever it might be, and they're not even open. It's hard to see.
Hey, I'm telling you what, listen, you put the nail on the head. People just need to, that there's a reason for everything. And I firmly believe that. And it's crazy.
COVID
It's
has
crazy how much
really hurt you then, because I was reading up
uh-huh.
on MasterChef 11, and
Mm-hmm.
you guys got like a split season because of COVID, did you not?
We did. So I could not figure out, when we originally agreed to go on, on the show, or we not even agreed, when we were getting closer, it was like, make sure you had an up-to-date passport and all of these things. I'm like, I can't wait. And then there was just kind of like the mumblings of like different places we were going to go. And I'm like, when is this going to happen? And we were also told like, a certain amount of what you'll be filming, cooking, and then you're kind of like your rest. And it just felt like the full course press was constant and getting worse and worse. Like at times it was like a double day, right? And without saying too much, because I'm not supposed to. So it was just like, and I now know why, is because they recognized that COVID was. So what happened? We went out there. I mean, I had heard of COVID, and I actually had like a couple jokes. Like we had Super Bowl,
Yeah.
and I brought a bottle of champagne to our friend's house, and I wanted the whole thing because I was that bitch that day. And so I put on my champagne bottle. At the time, it was funny. COVID, don't touch, you'll die. Because really, not a lot of
Yeah,
people were
yeah.
dying, So, like, it was funny. This is prior to me going out there, so beginning of February, and it was a hoot. And guess what? I drank that whole bottle by myself. People knew they didn't want to die,
They
and so
knew.
then we go out there. We go out there and we're filming like crazy. There's no talk of like, of us going anywhere, and you hear the mumblings of COVID. But we were such in a bubble that you're filming from the 4:30 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, and it is just like boom, 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 and so you don't really pay a lot of attention to what's going on. And I can remember one time walking into the hotel that we were staying in and seeing on the news that Rita Williams and Tom Hanks had contacted COVID on
Yeah, yeah,
set
yeah. I
wherever
remember
they were,
that.
and I was
One of
like,
like the first
"Dude,
big celebrities.
yeah," and I was like, "What the hell?" So that was wild. And that's kind of like when it became like, oh, wow, this is something. And then, they obviously recovered. So they would give us updates. And by they, I mean like the executives from Fox, the executives from Endemol, our producers, like everybody, all the head people, which is crazy to be like, I was in a room with like really big deals, would come in a line and out of the blue, and you're just kind of like, what's happening? And they kind of would give us an update saying, okay, we're getting pushed a little more, because they went from originally you could have as many people as you wanted in a room or in a building. Yeah. And then it went to 200, then it went to 100, then it went to 50. And when the 50 was tough. I mean, it was actually almost impossible, because with set, crew, us, that was like very hard to do. I mean, you're talking hair, makeup, and then all of the camera people, all of the sound people, all the producers who sit upstairs, all of it. Yeah. That's kind of when they pulled this, they said, we can't go any further. I'll never forget that day. We actually had two cuts, or not two cuts, but we had two shows. And it was like, I mean, we were all dead. People had like lost their will to live. It was just like really hard. I'm like, what did we sign this up? Why did we sign this? We signed up to do this, or why did I do this? Because it just like at that point, it was like a breaking point. And then I understood, because they all came in and they were like, listen, we are sending you home tomorrow. It was like 8:00 at night. And I was like, eh? And they're like, we're sending you home tomorrow.
That's a lot all in one day, right? Like filming one episode in one day with hair and makeup and all that stuff. Like, I don't know personally, but it's got to be a lot, especially when you're trying to like focus on cooking and actually be competitive. That's a completely different ball game, but it makes it very relatable when you talk about when you show up with a bottle of champagne, it said it'll kill you and stuff. It was so early on in the COVID thing. Like even here, do you ever heard of a buck and dough? Like where you like throw a big party and it's like costs like say $20 for 5 drinks and all the money goes towards your wedding.
Oh, I love it.
So that's a big thing here. And so we threw our buck and dough, and it happened to be the weekend before COVID shut down arenas. Like it happened so fast, because we'd show up, we did our buck and dough, 200, 300 people show up. And then the weekend after, the arena was shut down, and whoever was supposed to have their buck and dough after us couldn't do it. And then my friend's buck and dough was the weekend after in a different city, so they were still allowed to do it. But one of their door prizes was toilet paper and sanitizer. Like it was such a mockery at first, because like, you thought, if this even lasts, it's going to be a month or a week or whatever. And now we're still sitting where we are right now. So
I can remember them handing me a mask, things to go home with. Like they gave us gloves, hand sanitizer, and a mask. I was like, this is silly, but I'll do it. So I was like the only one on the plane, except for like, a few foreign travelers who like was wearing the mask. Right. And I was just like, okay, I guess I'll do this, whatever. I mean, I wasn't worried about it a bit, but I just was like, well, this is what they asked me to do. And I was trying to be a rule follower for once in my life. And then, well, look at where we are now.
How much of the show did you guys have filmed before you guys got sent home?
We were over halfway. So we were there for 3.5 weeks. And then we came back for 3.5 weeks. So we had, I want to say, let's think. We had 5 full episodes left in the finale when we came back. So we were over half. You can actually see if you watch the show. Now I'd like to say you can't see it in me, because I really tried my best, but you can see in some people like the continuity, you can see a little different. Yeah. A little happier.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little fluffier. COVID fluff.
The COVID fluff. I call something else the COVID fluff. Yeah, but not some weight staying at home all the time. But when you got back, I know like watching the show, like you made it to 7th place, correct?
Yeah.
Was that the first episode back? Second, which has also got to be such a like piss off for you, because you might have been on a roll. Like you're like in the groove, you're cooking so much, you're used to the ingredients, you're used to the pantry, the fresh, there's like the garden there with all like the fresh
herbs.
Stuff, but herbs. Yes, exactly. So you come back and now you're trying to jump back into it after sitting at home watching the world fall apart for 6 months.
Fall apart.
So that doesn't make it any easier to come back.
No, it wasn't. And like, my mind was in a different place. Like my business fell apart. I was the only employee. I had to let everyone go, but with the hopes of eventually bringing them back. I mean, it was just me trying to like save things. So like it was extremely stressful. And so, and not only that, when we went back, everything was full PPE. So you're like in the kitchen, and if the cameras were not filming, you were in full gear, a mask, the shield, gloves. I mean, so like that in itself, cooking with that is like impossible. So it was just like, it was a lot. It was a lot there. Yeah. I mean, they did the best they could. And I tell you what, I give it up to that show. They're amazing. They had their list of rules, from their industry. I mean, it was thicker than the Bible. It was like crazy, but they, and bless them for bringing us back because,
Yeah, exactly. Things were crazy, but so you had to go from cooking to the cameras coming out, and obviously on television, they're not going to have you all sitting there in PPE, but you had to take it off, keep cooking. Then when they got whatever they needed for that, like small segment, then they'd go back to PPE, or you cooked the whole meal.
No. So during the actual meal, so if we ever did anything, if we ever wanted to practice anything, not meals that we'd show on the show, but if we want to do anything in the test kitchen, like, like learn new skills, we were in full PPE. That was shit. Yeah, and the best part is like, you should have seen my PPE because like I would always go to taste something and I would hit the shield like an idiot. I mean, it was kind of funny. It's kind of like, do you guys have smart water?
Yes.
Okay. So every time I open the bottle of smart water, it comes shooting out just to show me how dumb I am. It's like a constant, it always lets me know that I'm the idiot. So it's kind of like it's like, haha, you're drinking smart water, but you're dumb. So I felt also the same way. It's like you're trying to taste your food because you're so good at making it and you can't hit your mouth, you jackass.
So that could have that probably happened to so many people. Like something that could happen.
I'd like to think it happened to all of us, but maybe just me and maybe Autumn.
By the end of the episode, your plastic cover is just covered in shit.
It was great.
Was it a long process to get onto the show? Like obviously, I'm assuming people who get onto a show had previously watched it, they got intrigued, and then they applied. Is that like how the process works? Never really applied.
Yeah. So great question. So yes, for some of us, I mean, like I was a huge fan. I watched the season year after year. My family loved the show. I loved anything Gordon Ramsay did. And so I just kind of like got a wild hair one year. I had lost my dad. I know you mentioned that a little bit, and he had a long battle with early onset dementia. And so I had lost my dad, and then the next year I lost an uncle. And then the year following I lost 2 uncles and a cousin, and they were all like, it's bullshit. Our family's very close. And so it was just like, I mean, I don't want to say it was midlife crisis, but I was to a point like, okay, we're all getting out of here the same way. Right. And so I want to do something because I just felt this need, like there's something more, and I could keep going and doing the same thing every day, which I'm not upset about my life. We have built a beautiful home. We've got beautiful kids, but I felt the desire to try something that I would never do before. And so for whatever reason, actually during that same time of me just kind of like thinking about this, I was part of the MasterChef fan club. And so I received the email that they were currently doing auditions and they had a couple left. And I was like, oh shit, let's just throw this out there. And so I did. And they responded to my email and asked me if I could send back a video of answering some questions, which I did. And then they said, hey, we've got 2 live auditions left, but our producers would like to meet you. You can be in a private group, so you're not standing in line all day, or you can do a video audition. And I was like, well, what? Any excuse to get the hell out of this house. I have little kids. I'll do it. Yeah. So I called my friend. Abby. She's my best friend in the world. I was like, girl, want to go to Chicago? She was like, yeah, let's do it. So we went to Chicago and I made half the food. So what I made was a stuffed squash, and I made homemade Italian sausage. Like I actually ground it, beef shoulder, ground it. Like I seasoned it for a few days. And then, so I made half that part at home. I got it like not a Dutch oven, but whatever, the stove, the ovens you can put on your countertop. So I brought that to our hotel room, and I did the rest, roasted the squash in our room at like 4 a.m. the next day before this audition. We set the fire alarm off like 3 times. It was a shit show. It was super funny because we're both like naked, throwing our towels, like trying to get the stuff. Cause I'm like, we're going to get kicked out of here. I mean, and here's the worst part is the hotel that we stayed in. It was one of those hotels where, where you walk out and everybody's looking out at the center of the hotel. So there's no question when they see these doors opening, they're going to know it's my room, like there's no hallways. It's just like this square and open.
Yeah. Like, where everyone can see.
We're so screwed. Yeah. So anyway, so I went down and I mean, like, it was weird, man. I just like kept making, and I had no idea what to expect. So my best friend, she's like sitting there waiting for me, and went in at like 7 a.m, kept making these round after round after round tastings. And then it was interviews. And then it was like, I just kept making it. And finally at the end of the day, they called, I want to say that I think there was over 1,000 or 2,000, I don't even know, Chicago, maybe 2,000. And there was 14 people who made it to the next step, which was the next day. So they asked me if I could stay. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. Yeah. And so they're like, and I was like, well, what do I have to do? I'm like, can I do this from home? I mean, we're supposed to leave. My friend has to be back. She's got a baby. It's just like a one night deal. And they're like, well, we want to do a screen test with you. I was like, super. So I send my friend, she's like, I'll just take the train home. This is not a big deal because we do have a direct train. We're only like 130 miles from Chicago. So I was like, great. So I go and have lunch at my favorite restaurant, and I'm like so freaking out. And I was just like, okay, it's my favorite pizza place. And I'm waiting for like 45 minutes before they could even seat me. And I mean, this is wild. And I finally get sat. And right before I get sat, I was like, I want a beer. So I go up to the bar. There's an opening. So I go to the bar and order a beer. And the guy's like, you can just sit here. And I was like, well, no, it's all right. I already have a table. He's like, it's open. I can do full service. I was like, all right, whatever. So, I mean, whatever. I'm just, on my phone, like telling everyone, holy shit, I can't tell you what's going on, but I just made it into MasterChef. Like I was supposed to have a really quiet mouth.
Yeah.
I did not. So I was like, I couldn't
How are you
help
not supposed to tell people that? Like such a big part in your life, like such a big thing to beat all those people to be on the show. There's no way I would hold it back.
And honestly, they're just setting themselves up for failure because nobody followed that rule and they know it, But so I'm sitting there. All right. So my meal comes. I had my purse on my shoulder or in my lap. And the night before, my zipper had broke on this purse. So anyway, so I take my purse off. I, put it under my coat, and I'm like literally looking at my phone, eating my pizza. Life is great. This is crazy. And all of a sudden I get a phone call from an 800 number, and it was my American Express. And they said, hey, we have fraud on your account. Can you verify? I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. I was like, because I had a business for my personal business.
Yeah.
But I also did pharmaceutical sales. So I was like, well, what account is it? Is it my pharmaceutical card or is it my business card? They're like, it's your pharmaceutical card. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense because I have it with me. I said, so it's probably internet fraud. So just go ahead and close it. They're like, no, we see that your pin or your strip has been, used. I was like, well, you're silly. I was like, okay, well, cancel it. Not a big deal. So I'm not paying attention to the beep, beep, beeps I'm getting in this call. I hang up the phone, and now I've got a call from my bank, from my personal credit card, and from my other. Yeah. So what happened was literally I sat down, put that purse down under my jacket. Someone slipped, got it right out. And within 10 minutes, they had tried. So they basically had somebody waiting and tried to ring up $1,500 worth of stuff at a store 5 minutes down the road. So I was like, shit. Because now I'm in Chicago. I did have a hotel room because I already previously booked it, but I had no card. So then I'm there. It's like 1:00 in the afternoon. I've got to stay until 5:00 the next day. So so I'm eating, but I can't pay for my food.
Gosh.
It was wild, but this is just like tells you the power of people. So there was this young guy sitting next to me, and he was, minding his own business. And he's just like, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, my card is, I said it to the bartender, like, my wallet's been stolen. And he's like, what? I was like, my wallet has been stolen. I had my license in there, everything. And I also had these, like all the death cards from like my dad and my, like things were very important to me that I carried everywhere I went. Everything was gone. And so I was just like, oh my God. So I called my husband, and he's like, well, can I Venmo you money? I said, well, how am I going to get it? Like, I can't take money out. And he's like, oh my gosh. He's like, can you write a check? I was like, I don't have a checkbook. Like, do people even do that these days? I don't even know.
What the
This kid next to me goes, yeah, he goes, ma'am, can I just give you some money? And I was like, no, I'm not taking your money. I mean, he was young, and he's like, honestly, just let me give you some money. And Jeff's like, Venmo him and have him pull money out. So I did. I was just, because I could still use our checking account Venmo. So I Venmoed the kid $60. He's like, I'm going to go to the ATM and pull it out. And people next to me, they're like, he probably just stole from you too. I was like, I don't even give a shit. This kid came back, $60. I go to my hotel, which was covered by said credit card points, so that was free. And then I was telling the hotel what happened, and so they kept my tab open for a day, so that way if I wanted any food, it was there. I go up into my room, and it's covered with snacks from the hotel. Like, cause so they knew the story, and by the time I made it to my room, they gave me bottles of water, like all sorts of snacks, trail bars,
That's
like anything
incredible.
to get me. Power of the people, right? So like, there's people out there, and that's how I look at that story. That's the only reason why I tell it, because people are like, well, that was awful. But actually it was on this path of just showing you that there's really good people out there. Like, and that's how this whole path has been that for me. Yeah.
So, wow.
A lot, man.
Like starting off, like right back to where you started with that was your dad and how you lost all these relatives, and it just changed what you did in your life, or at least made you want to take more risks. And that's what happened to me. That's why I reached out to you, because I realized, like, no matter what age you are, no matter where you are in your life, losing your parents obviously is going to be a terrible, terrible, terrible experience. But I honestly had that feeling. I don't know if it was meant to be or whatever it may be. I don't know if you believe in superstition or whatever, but you lost your dad. You're on MasterChef. I loved watching you. Like, your energy is just like, I get like more calm and like, like enclosed when I do these podcasts, but I'm the same type of person. Like, I'm that outspoken, cheer everyone on. I'm there for everyone. I'm there for the good time. I'm there for the life experience type of thing. So it just, that really did just piece it all together. But I was not expecting like this huge, amazing experience of yours when you're in Chicago, going to this amazing pizza place and everything's going well. And then the wallet's stolen. Like, thank God the fraud departments clearly work, because they got a hold of you so fast. But wow, what a change of events.
But isn't that yeah, doesn't that also just show you how life works though, right? I mean, in anything, like, so obviously you're going down the road of life, and then something happened, and I would love to know what happened to your dad, but it's like us, like things were coming together in life, and then my dad got sick, and then, but you keep going on, and then you have to take the good. You can't just think life sucks for the rest of your life. Yeah. It's a weird thing, but life keeps moving. Right. And you waste your time here. Right. Because we're like I said before, we're all getting out of this one way.
Yeah, life is way too precious, clearly.
So, what happened to your dad?
It was like early January. Like, we noticed at Christmas he was going yellow.
Oh no, pancreatic cancer.
It was liver failure and kidney failure. It was jaundice. So that happened like early January, and by January 28th or 29th, he'd passed, or January 30th is when he passed. But it was just such a roller coaster. It was like, he was yellow, and then he was in the hospital. They said he had gallstones, a full gallbladder full of stones, and they're going to get rid of it and he'll be good. And then we're like, okay, sweet. Like, that's great news. Then goes in for the actual surgery to get it removed. And then it's like, your liver and kidney have like zero function. Then it was like, then it was, you're on the liver transplant list, and your kidneys are starting to come back. So you're starting to get healthier, because your kidneys can come back, your liver can't. So he's on the transplant list for his liver. Everything was going great. He was number one on the list. We're just waiting. And then he went from ICU to a 4-person bedroom because he was getting so much better. And then he got pancreatitis. So he got like a disease in his pancreas, or like an infection in his pancreas. And then his body just went really fast declining. So it shut that down. So
this year?
No, it was 2019. So it's been 2 years. Okay. It's just about to be 3 years. What happened to your dad?
He was healthy prior to that?
Yeah, like, not like the most fit person ever, but he didn't take, like, I think he might have took high blood pressure medication. That's it. Like, but he took that since he was like my age. Just happened to be like a genetic thing, that he wasn't really like out of shape or anything. But yeah, it just happened.
How old was he?
52.
Oh, fuck that. No, my husband's 51. I would die. That's not okay. I'm really sorry. My dad had early onset dementia. So like, we just kind of like noticed some weird things happening when he was like, actually, and I think, I don't know, there's a lot of things they can never say. They say dementia. They won't say Alzheimer's unless really ultimately he had Alzheimer's, but they won't say it. he had a form of dementia. I don't know. They won't say, because after, the only way they can actually diagnose you with Alzheimer's is after you die, they have to do a biopsy of your brain. That's the only, they have to cut you open and see if you've got the white plaque and what it looks like. Right. And that's how they say Alzheimer's. So instead they use the big umbrella of dementia. But it was sad, man. It was sad. He was like my best buddy. Like, so I'm the girl who cusses, drinks. I smoked cigarettes with him, you know, like, I mean, like my dad taught me everything. I was a horse girl. I was like his tomboy. And so that was scary. And he got diagnosed on my 26th birthday. And I just remember him sitting there. So he had my mom, my sister, myself in the room. And so we're all sobbing, and we had tried for like a year to get him diagnosed, and every other doctor were like, oh, he's fine. And finally this doctor said, yes, you have dementia. And my dad goes, so how am I going to fix this? And the doctor looked at him and goes, there's no fixing it. And we were just like, and he just sat there like he was always our problem solver. Like my dad fixed everything, right? There was nothing my dad couldn't get us out of. And this was one thing he couldn't get himself out of. And that was just like, it was rough. And it's literally the longest death. I mean, it's the longest death. It is so sad, because there's times where they will like almost like the neurons will trigger, and there they are again, and they recognize what's happening, and they start crying, and then they're gone. It's just like crazy. So I will tell you one blessing though. So December 2000 and December 19th of 2015. So less than a month prior to him dying, he told my mom that he loved him. He said, I love you, Rose, which was crazy because he was nonverbal at the time. And at that same time, my husband passed my mom on the road, and my little boy goes, I want to go see Papa, because he was in a nursing home at this point. And so just by passing my mom, my husband turns around and takes both of our boys over there. And the boys always would lay with my dad, and he would just lay in his bed, and he had both arms. And so so my husband and mom were just sitting there chatting it up, just hanging out with my dad. The boys sit there and they, you know, lay in his arms and watch TV. And, you know, and you talk to him a little, you know, and that was basically it. And when it was time to go, Jeff looked at him and said, well, Fred, we're going to get going. And he literally took his hands around the boys and put it on their lap. Like he was like, oh, okay, Fred, you want us to stay a little longer? And he said, yes. So
wow,
he stayed a little longer. Mm-hmm. So they got to stay a little longer. And so like that was also really special. And then that was the night he told my mom, I love you, Rose. Crazy. And we had no idea that he was near. I know. So, you know,
how long did you guys take him to doctors that weren't listening?
Well, oh God, I would say 58, 59, 60, probably from the time he was 58 till he got diagnosed at 63, something like that. 62, 63.
The reason why I ask you is like my dad, he had problems with overlapping discs in his back, and it caused him to lose feeling from his waist to his feet. It wasn't like life threatening or anything. It was just with healthcare here, it takes a long time to get in for surgery. Like I think it was on like a 1.5 year waiting list. But for a full year prior to him going completely yellow, he was in the doctor's office 2 times a month, every single month for a full year, like complaining about so many pains and aches that he felt weren't related to it. And he was just like, so like, he knew, like he had to, your body got, like, you got to know, right?
Yeah,
it's different with dementia or Alzheimer's. And that's the one good thing I'll take away from this. He had 1 month of fighting, and he suffered for a little bit at the end, I'm sure, but
yeah,
it was 1 month and it was done. We didn't have to see him go downhill or not talk or not remember. But that's why it blows my mind. Like this story of like, you're saying that there's something wrong and you go to doctors and it's not happening. And same thing with dad, like 1 full year of just complaining and getting blood tests and getting all these different tests. And you can't see that and even like the specialist that eventually like worked on dad and like did all the tests on his kidneys and liver said like his kidneys and livers have been failing for like a year. So like, it's just,
damn,
these stories are giving me chills listening to you talk about that stuff. Like, but
it's not right. It's not right. It's not right. Yeah. And you definitely deserve, and that's, you know, that is the problem with some healthcare. And it concerns me, like, cause I feel like they're trying to push more of that, like in the States, and it's not right. You know, it's just, I'm sorry you experienced that, because he shouldn't have been treated like a cattle. And, you know, it's cause it's really kind of what it is up there. It's like, it's just like the mass, and it's not, there's no bedside manner and there's no patient care. And I don't live in Canada, but I do have family who lives in Canada. My husband's originally from Canada. And so he's got uncles up there. He's still Canadian. And so I just know the struggles that they've all had. So I'm really sorry.
Yeah, it's tough. It's got the healthcare system has its ups and downs. It's tough to,
yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to tell what's good and what's bad. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's never enough healthcare workers, that's for sure. But
no, I agree.
Back to what we were talking about previously before the dads got brought in.
Right.
You had talked about like meeting Gordon Ramsay. Like you were talking about how like Gordon Ramsay was there and all this different stuff. But I was one of the things I really wanted to ask you is how nervous were you going into that first episodes where like I saw that emotion on your face and like that's got to be one of like other than your cooking, one of the reasons why they were like, this girl has to be on this show. Like just like that, right? That vibrant, like you can just tell how she's feeling all the time. And just seeing him walk through the door and all the other chefs walk through the door and even some of the features, like the masters, like it was incredible.
Yeah.
But how was that? How was it meeting them? Was it surreal? Did you get
to so surreal. First of all, Gordon is like a stud. And like I've never realized what a little body he has. But so seeing him the first time, it was just like, what the hell? Like, literally, I couldn't wrap my head around it. And let me tell you, I have schmoozed with some big people. Okay. Like I one night partied with Guy Fieri and put my hands through his hair and I guessed what kind of product he used. Like, right. So I have done the things. I've done funny things in my life. I mean, the list goes on really, but so I don't normally get starstruck. And if you don't with Gordon Ramsay, then you're an idiot, really. So obviously, but I I'm also not a sweater. I'm a glower, and it was just like a flood. I literally could have put up my arms, and it was just like an ocean. It was wild, and I couldn't look up. So here's also something. He was standing at my kitchen for like, for honestly 5 minutes, and when you're back there, you're back there for like 15 minutes. So they just kind of edit together what they want. And there was actually times where I know for a fact I wasn't saying that at that point. It's amazing how they'll ask you questions in the green room and they'll ask you questions up front and they actually kind of piece together your story. So it isn't necessarily everything that you said in line, but it all works out. Nice. But meeting him was, I've seen the show every single season and with all of them, how it could go. Like I knew with Joe, I just knew because I've watched the show and I just know who he is. And I was like, whatever, dude. But
he's tough
with Gordon. He is tough, but it's also a reality show. And when those cameras were down, he was like amazing. He became and he's tough on the show towards me. And I think it's actually really funny. And he and I have actually discussed this after we had lunch, Memorial Day weekend. I went to New York City and we met and I invited Abe from the show. And we went and had lunch with him. And that was like a 3-hour lunch. And we learned a lot. And it was really amazing. Yeah, he's a great guy. But back to Gordon. He was awesome. And like, there was something so comforting being with him back there getting judged. Like because I've seen him for so long and it sounds really crazy, but I just had like a connection. Like I knew I was going to be okay. And all of a sudden, like when I put it in my head, all the things that brought me to this point, and he asked me something, he said, what would your father say if he was sitting right now? And I said, he is here right now. And I picture him right next to you and he's sitting on his hands. He's so excited. He's sitting on his hands to keep himself from clapping. And he literally was dying at that because he's a dad of many kids and he gets it. Like, and he just said he would be very proud. And I knew at that point that I just had a feeling that it was going to be okay, no matter what. But I did think that I was going to get an apron at that point. But Joe gave me a run for my money because Joe's a jerk. There, I said it. So, but it was amazing. Everything, he was stern. He was funny. He's very funny. He's actually funny. All three of them. So Chaperone, Joe and Gordon, all they did was cut jokes the entire time. The one who is actually really funny is Aron. Chaperone is very funny. Really? He says the dumbest, but intentionally like these off the wall things that makes him sound very airy. But he was a good part. He gave good levity to the stress that we were under. But they all ping very well off of each other. But ultimately, nobody could bring me out of my headspace when I would get sometimes it felt like there was bricks on my shoulders. Nobody could get me out of it better than Gordon. Yeah, he was amazing.
you watch like Hell's Kitchen and stuff. Like I remember watching that show and like you just see him like snap on people. So it's cool. Like maybe as he gets older or like experiences more and like especially like with dealing with so many chefs now with through MasterChef all these seasons and people come up and see how amazing chefs can be. I don't know. It just seems like he's a lot. That's also a different show, right? Like
it's a different show.
It's called Hell's Kitchen for a reason.
And the thing is like with us, you're not supposed to have any culinary experience or not for several years. In hindsight, there were people on the show who it's like, it was there's one who owned several restaurants. There's a couple who went to like the best culinary schools in the world. So it's kind of like, all right, but they do have a show to run. Ultimately, it is two different shows and he can be more of his kinder hearted self on our show because he expects more out of Hell's Kitchen because they are in professional kitchens for years, So that's why he's tough because you're in his industry for sure. You're not aspiring, you're there. So
now when you talk about that, like with different people on the show, you guys, like I remember following it on social media, your little cliques. Like you had like a group of friends, like you guys would drink together and you guys are hanging out together. And I'm based on what you were saying, like you clearly talk to some of them still. How was that? Like, did that make things easier for you or harder to watch people leave, harder to watch people not do well? Like, how did that go?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So every year when I watched this show in the past, I mean, I would literally make it fun. I didn't understand. I just thought it was fake how people are crying or bye so-and-so. It's like, you don't give a shit, right? Like, why do you care? But honestly,
so true.
Because when you get to know these people's backstories, and especially the ones that weren't lying about their backstory, which was nobody that everyone I hung out with was legit, the real deal. Kelsey's the real deal. Abe's the real deal. Tay's the real deal. Autumn. I mean, the list goes on and on. But once you get to know these people and you know how hard they're fighting for this, for me, it was a competition, but I knew we all wanted as bad. So like that's why I did root for everyone because I got what they were leaving behind and I got what they're reasoning. Like Sue, amazing. Love her. You understand. And so it was sad. Seeing Lex go, it was just awful. You become really connected, but also hanging out was a blast. So so they're very strict. So you don't even get into your room. Like, and which I think is great. So like they allow us to have like hallway parties and stuff. so like girls, I mean, literally we would lay in our doorway, the girls, because girls were on one floor, guys were on another. So we'd lay in our doorway and just drink and just like pass shots to people, like, because you can't let your door close. Because if you let your door close, you can't go back in it because you don't have a key. So then we got a little smarter. We got a little smarter as the season went on about how we were going to make this work. And it was a ton of fun. That in itself, having that experience with it was like it was a life science experiment, putting these people in this place, taking away all of their devices. I mean, like we had no outside contact. You couldn't even pick up the phone and call your buddy in another room because someone would pick up and be like, Ian, get off your phone. They knew. Crazy.
Wow.
Right? So yeah. Oh, they're serious. And so, And so it was, I mean, like, but just like having it felt like we were on a different planet in our own little world, and nobody will ever understand what that group went through than us. And every season it'll be that way, I'm sure. But for ours, it's very special. We all like Jersey, love them, like all of them, like, we all have very unique places in each other's hearts. That's for sure. Yeah. It's a legit connection. So like what you saw is legit. Yeah.
It's cool to see it though. Cause while you're watching the show, you're like, I watch the show specifically because I want to get better at cooking. I love smoking meat. Mm-hmm. We do our own stuffed sausage every year, venison sausage. We do pepperettes. We do jerky. We do all that stuff. And I really do love to cook. I don't think I'm a pro by any means, and I probably would not get on MasterChef, but it was cool to like learn new tactics, learn what you guys use, try and figure out why you put certain stuff in certain dishes. And that's why I watched it. But it was really cool to see how you guys were connecting with one another outside of the show. It kind of made it like, so you'd start rooting for people. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I reached out to you. I thought Autumn was hilarious. Like, just watching her and her Boston accent was just so funny.
Yeah, she's great. She's my best friend. So Autumn and I are super close. We actually have, now I can't say because I might have just signed an NDA, but I can guarantee if you go on my post, you might figure out what we're doing next. So Autumn and I are like boys. So we were always connected on the show. She was my person I could ping off of, and I was hers. And, you know,
Nice.
a lot of people are there and they're lovely, but they were there for a competition. And so, you know, they cheered to your face, and behind your back, it was not necessarily cheering, you know, they were like, well, she sucks today. Thank God she can go. Not everyone was like that. And so Autumn was one of my major people on that show. And so we've always just been connected. She came right after the show and surprised me for my birthday in Nashville. My husband threw me a surprise party. I mean, I literally pissed my pants when I saw her because I couldn't believe it. And I've been drinking a lot. It was a really fun day. And so I saw her, I was like, what? And I just kept yelling, bitch, because I couldn't believe she had done that. I mean, we have matching tattoos now. MasterChef tattoos. We do a lot of fun things together. So we're pretty, and honestly, everywhere Autumn and I go, it's always fun. So people look at me, it's funny because a lot of the hate that I would get online is like, oh my God, she looks like she's a soccer mom and she drinks rosé all day. First of all, what's wrong with rosé? Screw you. A South Florida mom. I'm like, none of that sounds terrible. You're jealous. Get out of your parents' basement. But it's funny because if you put Autumn and I together, we are like, we bring the party. We like to have a good time. And so it's just funny the perception compared to the reality. And it's great when we go out places because there's nowhere we go. We were in Boston a few months ago. And the show was on, and I'm not kidding you. If we had one person, we had 50 people who were like, holy shit. And it was like weird because we're just two girls drinking a beer at a bar. She came to Detroit maybe like a month ago, and it was the same freaking thing. It was so much fun, but it's not like, you know, people are like, oh, can we get a picture? I was like, get a picture. Let's follow each other on social media. What are you doing later? Like, we're fun. Like, you want to go gambling? You know, like we just we're taking this for what it is. And by no means do we feel like we're no different than we were before in the show. If anything, let's all have fun together and like get to know the real us. We're fun.
Sick.
We're up for any adventure.
I love it. And just in Michigan there, I don't know if I actually put together that you were just in Michigan down there. I'm near London, Ontario. I don't know where your husband's from, but
Do you know my husband's parents? They grew up in London, Ontario, and their very first church, they were pastors, was in London, Ontario.
Does he still have cousins or relatives in London?
I don't know if he probably does. Last name Hicks. But I know that a lot of them, I'm sure that he does. Yes, I'm sure that they do. I know some of them, but only the ones they're very, very still connected to. And a lot of them have moved to like Toronto, things like that. But that's crazy. It's a really small church, and I'm pretty sure it's still there. It's like 100 years old.
I went to college in Kitchener, Ontario. I don't know if you know where that is, but I had a teacher named Brian Hicks, and he's from London. And I actually worked with him on the trades when I went to school. So when you first said that, and then you said he was Canadian, I was like, there's no way. Then you're like London, and I'm like, all right, well, we're getting warmer. So,
right. That's crazy.
It's a small world.
Crazy.
I wonder if they knew each other, but
do you guys
like? I'm sure that this is related to you and Autumn, and you don't have to go into any detail. But my last question for you was: did you have any plans going forward with food? I know, like when I first got on here, I was not expecting to hear that your business had closed, which I'm so sorry to hear that. But you're looking forward, you're moving forward, you've got some good stuff lined up, it sounds like. So is there any anything you can say about what you want to do with food moving forward? Obviously, I can say yes, and that's it. I can say if you want further details. I mean, I can't say anything other than if you saw my post with Autumn and I, you'll get some idea. And then the rest is you'll have to wait. Well, you know exactly what I'm doing the minute we end this podcast. I'm going to figure out what that is. But if anyone wanted to follow you on social media or see what you're doing or talk to you or try and reach out to you about cooking and stuff, is there a place for someone to reach you?
Yeah, man. So if people want to go on Instagram, it's Ann Michelle Hicks. If people want to do a funny little shout out to their friends, because I love doing that, I'm on Cameo.
Nice.
So people can go and find me on Cameo. And if people want to learn how to cook from me, I also do cooking classes online. So I'm doing a few with a group called Eats With, or a company called Eats With US. And I'm working on another one called Chef Bay UK. And that's, so there's a lot of really fun things happening that I can talk about. Yeah. So all sorts of ways, but honestly, so there's ways to, I definitely, just like you reached out, unless you're a weirdo, I do respond. And then there's some people I respond to and then I realize they're weirdos and then I stop responding, you know?
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening, especially when you're on TV, but that's awesome.
Right.
So if anyone wants to follow you, go check out their Instagram. If you want to learn how to cook or want to get some lessons from her, definitely check out that as well. Thank you so much for coming on here. I really appreciate you doing this.
You're awesome. Anytime. And listen, we'll connect again in the future and we'll do a checkup. But the next time I come on here, I want some funny would you rathers because I've stalked you a bit and I want to be part of that.
So what we'll do is we'll definitely do one of those. I have a second podcast called Fresh Thoughts where I sit here and I drink beer and we just talk shit. We can definitely work on one of those.
That's what I want. That's the next we need to progress. Cause like, listen, definitely. I'll do an edible.
Sorry, you froze. What did you say?
Some beer. It'll be great. It's legal in Michigan, you know. Oh, I said, I'll do an edible. You'll drink beer. Maybe I'll do both because it's legal in Michigan.
Hey, it's legal here.
And then it's a good time. Perfect. Let's do it. That is right up my alley.
We'll definitely make sure like none of them are ever live. So we'll be able to edit them if we need to.
Right.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it, Ann. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're awesome. You have a great night, Greg.
You as well.
All right. Bye.
Bye.